If you're a player, coach, or parent trying to learn more about football, the quarterback position, navigate recruiting, or determine the landscape of both college and high school football, we got the podcast for you. But before we get going, quick shout out to our sponsors over at Lowney Sports. I've known Tim personally, and he's been a longtime supporter of both youth and high school athletes. He's also an attorney of over 25 years and both an NFL and NIL agent. Many think NIL is expensive, unnecessary, or that it only matters once you have an offer. But there's a lot more to know before the scholarships and deals start coming. To contact Tim for a free NIL consultation, call 617-733-8313 or visit lowneysports.com.
M2QB Academy is also a Wilson brand affiliate. When you're buying Wilson merchandise, go to the website, click checkout, and plug in our promo code M2QB-456 and save some money with your purchase.
This episode is brought to you by Cantiani Insurance Agency, insurance professionals specializing in home, auto, flood, and investment properties. They are the most referred insurance agency in Massachusetts. If you want coverage you can trust, call 508-791-2088 or visit cantianiagency.com. We also welcome a new sponsor, Wizard Computer Services, providing outsourced IT and cybersecurity since 1997. Call 781-341-2222 or visit www.wizardcpu.com for more information. New England's cybersecurity experts. All right, special guest on today's podcast, former Seahawk quarterback and three-time Pro Bowler Matt Hasselbeck. Matt, thanks for coming on.
All right. I'm glad to be here. It's late night. You guys are up early and up late. I knew you were up early. I know you grind. I see you guys working all the time. And if it's not on social media or something like that, I'll just be like on my commute, and I'll be like somewhere and I'll see a field and I'm like, I know those guys. I recognize the throwing motions. I recognize the people, the receivers. It's impressive what you guys have done in this area. I don't think it's a coincidence that there's so many great players, especially quarterbacks coming out of this area. I don't think it's a coincidence with the work that you're doing. So it's I'm happy to be here.
Appreciate that, obviously. And for those that don't know, we work with Henry too, Matt's son, who's now at App State. So that's kind of how we met Matt. But I want to talk to you about the Super Bowl. I mean, it's kind of recent here, kind of a wild one for you with New England roots. I played at BC. Dad was a Patriot, and then played for the Seahawks for a decade. What was that like?
It was crazy. It was really fun. On top of that, like my middle daughter, Mallory, she's playing lacrosse at Stanford, and the Patriots were practicing there every day. And she's like, oh, I saw, Coach Vrabel, and I saw Drake May, and I saw, it's just like, and, like just that, like, we were definitely rooting for the Seahawks, yet I have friends on the Patriots, and all of my friends in Boston here obviously were rooting for the Patriots. But no, it was cool because it was my team against my dad's old team. My dad passed away in April suddenly from a heart attack. And so just the fact that these two teams were even in the Super Bowl was just kind of like a special thing for our family. My daughter Annabelle, who's our oldest, she covers two teams in the NFL, the Seahawks and the Patriots. So those are the only two teams that she covers, and in sports media. And so then for those two teams, neither one was a playoff team last year. No one was ever thinking that the Patriots were going to the Super Bowl this year. Thought it was like a rebuild year. And, just to even have them out there in the Super Bowl together. And we happened to just already be, we were going to be there because Stanford did their first lacrosse game of the year the Saturday before the Super Bowl. So we were kind of already there as a family. It was just, it was an incredible week. It was a great Super Bowl. We parlayed that on into the parade on Wednesday in Seattle. It was I'm not sure I'm really recovered from it all quite yet.
I'm sure you played a big role in that, right? Like with the parade and all that, because you're one of the greatest Seahawks quarterbacks of all time.
I don't think it was a big role. So they do a cool thing, as you guys know more about these championship parades than I do, having, grown up here recently. You guys, like, I always see the duck boats, right? The duck boats. So like out there, it was the National Guard trucks, and so like each group had like their own truck. My truck was like the Legends truck, which means former players, guys that used to play, whatever. Richard Sherman was on that truck. Lofa Tatupu, who's a local Massachusetts guy, started his career at Maine before he went to USC, and then we drafted him in Seattle. Jim Zorn, who was my quarterback coach, was on there. I mean, it was a really cool group of people. And then like the big thing that I did that day is I basically was handing out commemorative, I won't say it, but like they were giving out commemorative stuff for the Super Bowl at the end. It was pretty good.
You also played in a Super Bowl, so you kind of mentioned like the week leading up to it and how that was a blast for you guys. But when you were playing, what did that week look like? Obviously, with the media and everything going on, and you're still trying to prep. How was that week leading into it?
Well, that's the thing. It's 2 weeks, and I think like one of the best things that I did in the NFL, what I learned to do, because I backed up Brett Favre my first 3 years, and Andy Reid was my quarterback coach my first year, and Mike McCarthy the second year, and Darrell Bevel and Tom Rossley the third year. Like I had really good coaches, and what I learned from them in the process was just that, their process. This is what a Monday in the NFL looks like. This is what a Tuesday looks like. This is what a Wednesday is. This is what a Thursday is. And I just was so like all about the process. So you never had to worry if you had prepared enough, and you never had to like over prepare, and you never had to worry if you had like, hadn't done enough. So like, as an example, Monday, I'm going to watch 4 games of the opponent, just casually, just watch 4 games. Tuesday, I'm going to lock in, make sure I'm ready for first and second down the following day. Then the next day, I've got short yardage, goal line, third down, maybe 2 minute. Then the next day is red zone. Obviously, we're reviewing every day. Then the next day is kind of that mock game situational and end of game situations, different rules, scouting report on referees, like that kind of thing. So like, that's just the normal week. So then all of a sudden you just throw 2 weeks on us with the same opponent in the biggest game of your life. There's some danger there that you overdo it or you get out of your process that got you there. And that's why if you have a really good process or system, I just really think that's like half the battle most of the time.
Yeah, and just kind of rely on that. And then the game itself, like coming out to that crowd with all that stuff going on, like what was that like for you?
That part was fun. I mean, I was just ready to go. The thing that got in the way, though, a little bit was that, pregame, I had my own routine there. And I'm not a guy that like needs to throw a ton to warm up or whatever. Like, I started as a backup. So like, I just knew like when I was Brett Favre's backup, no one was going to say like, yeah, you got 15 minutes to warm up. Like, it's not going to happen. Like if he all of a sudden goes down and doesn't get up, like I'm in. And the coach has to know he can call a pass. Like that's how I got it. That's how I would learn how to get loose, and so I didn't need all that, but I needed something, right? Like I had a process to that too. And so when I went out pregame, there was just like all these celebrities out there and all these like former quarterbacks that I grew up watching, and they wanted to talk and say, hey, and like they were doing the radio or they were doing the TV, or it was John Madden and Al Michaels were doing the game. And I got out of my process. I got out of my like rhythm. So I actually went back into the locker room and just kind of tried to do it in there. And then at halftime's normally like 14 minutes. I think for the Super Bowl, it's longer. It's like maybe a half hour. Well, at our Super Bowl, the Rolling Stones performed at halftime, and they just decided to go even longer. Like they didn't care, So like there were all these things that playing the actual game was super fun. The thing I wasn't ready for is the NFL had come up with new commemorative balls that year, and they were giving them out to like marketing sponsors or whatever. So they would use a new football every single play that they could. They would bring a new ball in. And so like, how it is, you guys probably know more than anybody, like quarterbacks like the ball that they're used to throwing.
Bunch of ball snobs, definitely.
Yeah. So like, that was something I did know going in. I talked to some quarterbacks that had played in the Super Bowl, and they were like, hey, you basically that you can't be a ball snob. You just have to think like, this is the greatest day of my life. I'm playing this is a dream come true, and a poor craftsman blames their tool. Like, make it happen. Who cares?
I like that one. That's good.
You hit on it a little bit about the process, and we talk with this about our guys all the time, right? Blocking out that noise and all those external factors and the adversity that you might go through. You just like talk to us a little bit about the Seahawks guy, Sam Darnold, what you saw in him, and going through what he had been through, and then coming on the other side, obviously as a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, it's a great story. I think a lot of quarterbacks, you know, could sympathize, with what he was going through. Some guys make it through, like they make it out of the tunnel. Other guys don't. Sam was a guy, he was 20 years old when he got drafted to the New York Jets. And, he couldn't buy a beer, he couldn't rent a car, and yet the Jets gave him the keys to the car. And they said, "Hey, you're in charge." And I just don't think he was ready. I just don't think he was quite ready. So, he had great parents that believed in him and he believed in himself, and he just kind of kept plugging away. But it was a long, long journey. I would say this is what I saw from Sam this year, though. First of all, he chose to come to Seattle. The Minnesota Vikings didn't chose not to sign him back. He chose to come to Seattle in large part because of the play caller and offensive coordinator was Clint Kubiak, a guy that was an assistant coach in San Fran when Sam went there to be Brock Purdy's backup. And he just kind of had this relationship with a guy who he said, I trust this guy. And so I think like when Sam this year was dealing with all this kind of stuff, all this outside pressure and noise, like, is he the Sam Darnold of the New York Jets? Is he still a bust or whatever? Or can he succeed without Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell and that kind of stuff? I don't think Sam like paid any attention to it. I think he just was locked in to his play caller, to his coach, and was just kind of like, I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to do. Like if you tell me to throw for 198 yards and don't turn the ball over and just get out of here with a win, I'm going to do it. If you tell me I got to cut it loose and go up against Matthew Stafford and Puka and Devontae Adams and Sean McVay and cut it loose and throw for 450 and a ton of touchdowns, like I'm going to do it. Like I'm just going to buy in all the way. And so what I love about it, what kind of year he had was, when I played quarterback and I would talk to like some of the guys in our quarterback room, I would use this analogy of like a bowler. Like great bowlers, they don't look down at the pins when they're bowling. They look at those little arrows like right in front of them, and they know that like that's my mark. If I hit that little arrow right in front, like the pin, it's going to be a strike because like I'm so focused on like what's right ahead of me. And like sometimes like as a quarterback, you can feel the pressure of all of it. But the best thing you could do is just like listen to your coach, do everything that he's asking you to do everything right. The score will take care of itself. And I think that's what Sam did with Clint Kubiak, and a ton of success and a ton of credit to go around for all of them. Clint's now the head coach at the Las Vegas Raiders. Sam Darnold is, he's a Super Bowl champion quarterback, and, he's going to be in Seattle a long, long time now.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job like instilling confidence in him. And I'm sure he had a chip on his shoulder too with how everything started out. So it's just a really cool journey, really cool story, like you said. And I think he's has a lot of good success coming for him in the future. Do you know Jake Bobo at all? Because he used to come to our sessions, so that was a really cool story. Local kid in the Super Bowl, obviously from New England,
awesome.
Grew up in that era.
So it's funny. I do know Jake Bobo. His mom, Casey Bobo, I think was like my son Henry's like guidance counselor in middle school or something like that. So something like that. But in fact, I think one of the reasons Henry chose to go to UCLA is that, he really liked Chip Kelly a lot. He loved Chip Kelly. But while we were at UCLA on his visit, every single meeting that we would go to, academics, athletic training, like strength and conditioning, like all the meetings, everyone said the same thing. They were like, "Man, Henry, you remind us of this guy we used to have here, Jake Bobo." and I think
That's
Henry
awesome.
loved it. It might have just been that the people in California, they only knew one dude from Boston. It was like, "Oh, you're another dude from Boston." But no, he's great. He was in my little quarterback receiver mentor group when he was at the combine. He's done a great job out there. And, he had all his friends out there for the game too. And I think his rule was like, "Hey, I'll hook you up. Tickets, post-game party, pre-game tailgate, all the stuff, but you have to be in Seahawks gear head to toe." I think that was the rule that they made as a group.
That's
awesome.
So shifting into your playing days a little bit, high school at Zavarian, and then did you walk on at BC?
No, I didn't walk on. It's funny. I was like a huge recruit, but I threw 7 touchdowns. I think I threw 7 touchdowns my senior year. We had a running back, Greg Camella, like he was so ridiculous. Like if we were anywhere near the 50-yard line, he would just score, I feel like, So I pretty much had every offer that I can think of, except for no Florida schools, no Colorado, and not Stanford, and not Notre Dame. Other than that, I pretty much had, it was like such a different world back then. It didn't
Yeah.
happen till after your senior year. Um, I really never had intended on going to BC. Tom Coughlin was one of the coaches when my dad was on the Giants, and he just was an incredible recruiter. And BC was really a program on the rise, with him there. And I went there, and he left. He left shortly thereafter. But yeah, it was not a stat filled senior year by any stretch, but we had a really good team, and I was really excited for the high school career that we all, my classmates, we put together. It was something to be proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then getting to BC, what was that adjustment like going from high school to college? And obviously, like you said, senior year didn't throw the ball a ton, and then getting in and playing at that level and playing really well and ending up getting drafted. Just talk to us a little bit about that process and going through all that at BC.
Yeah, I fell on my face, really. I wasn't successful. I was this like big time recruit, go in there, redshirt the first year. Tom Coughlin sits me and the other quarterback. He would bring two quarterbacks in every year, and he would sit us down. And he'd say, listen, whoever's worse is going to move to tight end. Like that was the threat, and so they probably would have moved me to tight end. I was worse, but the other kid was probably a better tight end. He actually got drafted to the New York Giants before I got drafted to the Green Bay Packers. So like he was the better tight end. But I didn't start. I really wasn't the starter at BC until the second game of my senior year. I mean, that was like the truth of how the college experience went. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but mostly me. Like I needed to improve. I needed to be more coachable. I had 3 different head coaches. I had 5 different quarterback coaches. It wasn't easy. If there was a portal, I would have tried to get in it. You could transfer back then. No one wanted me, so like I just had one choice. It was sink or swim. And so, fortunately for me, I got a chance to go into a game we were going to lose. The opening game of my senior season, we're going to lose. The head coach puts me in the game after I had kind of like, not been very coachable and great or whatever. He's like, all right, tough guy, like you go in, you call the plays. And somehow miraculously, it's worth a whole nother podcast. We win the game and I'm the starter the second game and then the rest of that year. But other than that, like I never would have played. And even when I did play at BC, I threw more interceptions than touchdowns in college. My rushing stats, I just saw this on the back of a football card. I had negative 288 yards rushing in college. Like it shouldn't have happened. It wasn't great. I never started a bowl game. I'm in like the BC Hall of Fame, but I'm like, really? Should I be? I'm in the ACC Legends Hall of Fame or whatever. Like I never played in the ACC. I played in the Big East, and I don't deserve this. It's just like it's really like I don't know. It's a blessing that I don't deserve, but because it was not easy. It was never easy in college.
Was it always your dream to play in the NFL? Obviously, growing up and your dad played in the NFL for a long time. Going into your senior year, are you thinking like that's the next step for you, even though at that point you hadn't played a ton?
I think the whole time growing up, I thought, I'll just play in the NFL. Like that's just kind of what I'm going to do. And because I had no idea. Like all my friends, their parents played in the NFL. Like that was it. And so my parents were like, that's not realistic. Like you're not even gonna get a scholarship to college. Like it's not. You better be all in on school. And so I was all in on school, and I was all in on every sport you could think of. But no, I didn't think I was going to be an NFL quarterback. And it wasn't until I think my junior year in high school, and I'm probably at that point, probably like 6'3", 170, I would say, and still growing and definitely needed to put weight on. And the quarterbacks there were like, hey, dude, like you're going to be good enough. Like they instilled it in me. They were like gassing me up. Like, hey, you could absolutely, come to my school, like go to LSU, come to University of Washington. I was like, really? You think I'd be good enough? And so it was like, that's when I started to believe like, hey, maybe I should really, really apply myself to this. But no, I didn't think that was really, how it was going to go. For a good part of it.
And then draft night, obviously you get drafted 6th round. Talk about that a little bit. Just the
Well,
emotion, the feeling.
yeah. So like, here's the deal. So I end up, I finished strong at BC, like strongish, I would say like top 25 quarterback in the country, like by all the rankings or whatever. And so all my friends are getting invited. My teammates are getting invited to the combine, all this stuff. I get uninvited to the combine. Like I don't get invited to the combine, basically. Ryan Leaf came out early. Somebody gets bumped. I get bumped. So, um, I said to my agent, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I guess it's over. And he's like, no, it's not over. We'll just have a pro day and we'll invite all the teams to come out to, your pro day. I was like, oh, okay, great. Yeah. Why didn't I think of that? So I have a pro day. Well, only one team shows up for my pro day, and it's the quarterback coach for the Packers, Andy Reid. And so, like, I'm like, all right, he shows up and he doesn't look like a quarterback coach. Like, he kind of looks like an O-line coach, if we're being honest. And so he's talking and I'm barely listening. I'm like, is this guy really the quarterback coach? Like, that was kind of like the level of like how I was paying attention in the meeting that we had. And he's like, it was great. He's kind of quizzing me. I didn't know what to expect. He was really funny. He was great to be around. And there's a blizzard going on in Boston at that time. And BC didn't have an indoor facility at the time. And so he was like, all right, do you want to go outside and throw in the snow? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And he's like, I'm not going out there. He's like, I just needed to know that you would have been 100% willing to go out there and throw because I coach in Green Bay. Like, that's just an important thing to know about you. And I was like, oh, but I've been training. Like, can I please go throw? And he was like, no, I didn't come here to watch you throw. I'm like, well, I thought you did. And so like, it was a kind of an eye-opening thing to me. Well, first of all, then I thought like, oh, shoot, like I'm definitely not getting drafted there or signed there. And so when they did pick me, and draft day is a whole nother story. But when they did pick me, literally in my head, I thought like, well, the Packers don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. Like, they didn't need to draft me. Like, nobody was going to draft me. Like, nobody. Like, you didn't have to waste a pick on me. This Andy Reid guy, Mike Holmgren, they obviously don't know what they're doing when it comes to quarterbacks. But what's funny is that they saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And I thought it was all about what I could prove I could do at the combine. And the stuff that they were looking for was all the stuff that they don't test for at the combine. He wanted to see like what I was like in the meeting. He wanted to see if I was a good listener, and he thought that I was, which is ironic because like the whole time that he was talking to me, I'm like kind of daydreaming. Like, I can't believe I'm not going to be able to throw. I can't believe that you're the quarterback coach. It's just like this, I don't know, immaturity on my part, but luckily it was enough to at least crack the door open for an opportunity.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable story. And then you talked about backing up Brett Favre. What were some things or takeaways or stories that you learned from him in those first couple of years? Because obviously the transition to the NFL is a big one, and I'm sure that played a part or a role in you kind of setting that foundation for your 18-year career.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And the first day I got there, Andy Reid calls me into the office and he's like, listen, you're going to meet these other quarterbacks. And I want you to, this is what he said. He said, I want you to study the intangibles of Brett Favre. He's coming off of his second consecutive Super Bowl, his third NFL MVP in a row. I want you to he's got bad fundamentals. He's got bad decision making. Your fundamentals are better than his fundamentals. Don't even pay attention to that. But I want you to pay attention to his leadership style, how he knows the first name of every single person in the building, how he motivates the team without, trust me, you'll just notice it. Notice how he intimidates the opponent without saying a word. Like all the different things. This is what I want you to study. And so that's kind of what I paid attention to. And it was like I was the annoying kid. There's 11 guys in the huddle and Brett's calling a play and I'm 12. I'm like, everyone's supposed to be 15 yards back and I was in the huddle. And they probably thought I was like the biggest loser ever. But I got to hear him call a play. And it was so different than how it's written in the playbook. How it's written in the playbook is, hey, we got green right, Fox 2, XY hook on 1. And he gets in there and he's like, all right, y'all, give me time. This one's coming out quick. We got green right, Fox 2, XY hook, Chewy, you're coming to you, buddy. On 1, ready, break. It was just different. It was like these little nuggets. He was so good at eye contact. Like he'd say X, Y, hook. Like he was just, no one was daydreaming in that huddle. No one didn't know the snap count. Like he had a way about him, like even if practice was like dragging just a little bit, he'd be like, all right, let's get a really good break. And let's run up to the line of scrimmage. Like we'll show these coaches, what's up. And like, we're ready, break. And we run up to the line of scrimmage. And the O linemen think they're like, yeah, we're showing the coaches. The coaches are like, well, it was a good break. This is a good practice. Yeah. You know what? Hey, let's call it early, guys. No sprints today. Like it just was like, he just had this way about him that you're just not going to find in a playbook. I wasn't allowed to talk in the meetings. I just was allowed to be there. I would write down all the questions that I would ask if I was allowed to talk. And then, Brett's backup quarterback that year was Doug Peterson. And I would basically ask Doug Peterson all the questions that I would have asked if I was allowed to talk. I'd ask him from the walk from the quarterback room to the locker room. It's just like, hey, what do they mean when they say, bear front? He's like, oh, the 46 Buddy Ryan defense, both guards are covered and the center's covered. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, good. But like, had I not had someone to like ask those questions to, that would have gone that whole year just wondering this and wondering that. So it was incredible for me. They were paying me to be there. I felt like I should have been paying them.
One thing that always like kind of stuck out to me, it's funny that you mentioned like how you needed to mature and become more coachable in college. But then you get to the NFL and like the command of the line of scrimmage and how you operated an offense. Do you attribute a lot of that to what you learned from Doug Peterson and Brett Favre? And as you got older, were there more guys you picked stuff up from? Like, I'm kind of interested to hear that because that was surprising for me to hear. Like at BC, you weren't that guy. And then through osmosis, you became that guy.
Well, there's so many, like when you have so many different coaches, like it doesn't really matter what your previous coach wanted you to do or told you to do. Like you got to be all the way in on your new coach, and that's the hard thing as a player sometimes, because sometimes the coaches, like I went from Tom Coughlin to Dan Henning as the head coaches at BC, and Dan Henning's a great quarterback coach, like great, was an NFL head coach, 2 different places. He didn't believe in, like if the quarterback was throwing to the left, he wouldn't drop back. Like, quarterbacks all drop back. We backpedaled. And like we had no 3-step drops. It was 7 or 5. And it was under center. And maybe it was gun sometimes if Damian Woody didn't snap it over our heads. But like it was like we backpedaled with everything. So if I'm throwing a speed out to my left or a go route or any route, corner route, I'm like under center and I'm backpedaling out like old school Dan Fouts of the Chargers. Like, and it was like, I wasn't willing to, I'm like, why can't we just like drop back like the rest of the world? And I was holding on to that. He also had this drill. He called it the goalpost drill. It's one of my favorite drills in the world, but I could not do the drill. Like, and I was like, well, so what? Like, who cares? It's just a stupid drill. And it was his wax on, wax off, Mr. Miyagi. Like, if you can't do this, I don't even, no, don't talk to me. Let's master this first. And he was never going to play me until I mastered that drill. And I didn't think it was important, so like, it was a lot of that kind of maturing that I needed to do. And so in my own head, I was kind of like, well, look what Tom Coughlin's doing down in Jacksonville with Mark Brunell. They're in the AFC Championship game. Like, why can't I just do it that way? But it doesn't matter. It's not my coach anymore. This is my new coach. I got to do it his way. And like, there's a great saying in offensive line rooms, if we're all wrong together, we're right. I think it kind of applies for other positions too, because you can't pick and choose what you're going to listen to with your coach. It's just that's a tough way to be an athlete.
Yeah, 100%. And you kind of hit on like the drill work there. Like, what would an indie period look like under him when you guys are going through? Because obviously with what we do versus with what quarterback coaches in college football and obviously in the NFL have time to do can be a lot different. So can you kind of walk us through an indie period?
Yeah, honestly, like if you have an hour to watch film, I would say 30 minutes of it are watching like the individual stuff that you guys do and in slow motion and like back and forth, slow motion, back, forward, back, like every rep. And, coaching it up like it's your golf swing and trying to do it in a way that's digestible, and so like, I'm really appreciative for what Dan Henning was as a coach, even though I wasn't hearing it for so long, like I was an overstrider. Like I was a big overstrider, and he would say, "You're overstriding, you're overstriding, you're overstriding," and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. Now I really, really fixed it with Mike McCarthy my second year in the NFL, because he found a way for me to really fix it, and it was like just everything clicked, everything. But it was this thing I was working on for years, and I could master it on some throws and some drops and some things, but like I was off balance all the time. And I would just say that's probably the biggest thing. If I could just say one thing for a quarterback, you have to be balanced. When you like, it helps a lot to be balanced when you throw. And I was so into like what my drop was going to be like, that when I got to the top of the drop, I was off balance, and then that was throwing me off, and I wasn't talented enough to overcome it. So once I got the footwork stuff down, it was a game changer for me.
Yeah,
That's
and
interesting to think about, because you think about watching film, you're thinking about 7-on-7 period, team period, things of that nature, that they would actually take the time to really break down the fundamentals. That's,
I would say half of the time,
wow.
maybe more with Dan Henning, maybe more was on the individual drill with no defense, just us, and that's normal in the NFL, I would say, for guys that are really into it.
what were some coaching cues like? Like you said, you were overstriding. Like, what were some of the things McCarthy would say to you to kind of help you start to close that up a little bit?
Like not wasting your penultimate step, so not wasting your second to last step. So let's just assume, I know no one's under center anymore, but like assume you're under center. You're going to take a 5-step drop. Don't waste your 4th step. Don't just it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, like your 4th step should be, without the defense being able to tell, should be breaks, so that your 5th step can be boom, boom, like hot potato, like strong coming off a pitcher's mound. Not like, oh, I'm trying to like slow down my momentum. Now I'm trying to come forward, like use that 4th step. And so the way that Mike did it, so this is a good thing that I thought the other Mike McCarthy did. Sorry, but fun story about that, by the way. He had texted me one time. I thought it was you, Mike. I hit him back with something, blah, blah. He hit me back. He's like, and then he said something like, I'm the one who taught you that. And I was just like, oh, wait a sec. I look at the numbers. And his is the 920. And I was like, the other Mike McCarthy. Funny. Gotcha. So, yes. But here's one thing that he did that really helped me a lot. Helped all the quarterbacks. He wanted us to do the Joe Montana 5 and 7-step drop. Okay. The Joe Montana style, which was a 3rd step, heel to toe strike, use your 4th step, slow you down like as breaks or whatever. It felt so awkward, but we would sit there and we would watch Joe Montana film for 20 minutes. And then we watch us for the next 20 minutes. And this is in the off season. And so we were like, man, I don't know. This feels uncomfortable. And everyone was feeling like, this feels uncomfortable. I've always done it this way. Well, here's what happened. He said, listen, when we do my individual work, you do it this way, the Joe Montana way. Once you get into a competitive throwing situation, 1-on-1, 7-on-7 team, whatever, do it however the heck you want to do it. You just play ball. And then I'm sitting there that year, 1999. I'm sitting there that year, like watching myself in a team drill, and I'm like, oh my gosh, rewind. I was doing the Joe Montana drop. I don't even know when it changed, but I had just drilled it in individual for so long. It was kind of like, and as an athlete, as a quarterback, I think it really helped me be like, oh, okay, I don't have to do it that way. I just have to do it for the drill this way. Cool. No sweat, coach. I'll do it. And then it just became my game. And now I can't imagine not doing it that way. I thought it was a great coaching thing that he did for us.
Yeah, I love to hear that, because we actually warm up every day with break step work, we call it. And it's literally, like you said, that 4th, 5th step or that 2nd, 3rd step of the drop. And it's all about getting balance, right? You're back then, especially more under center, you're really working to push for depth early, but then boom, 4, 5 or 6, 7, you're working to get on balance at the top of your drop. So
and what I noticed too is like why I bought in so quick to that is obviously how it felt. But Brett Favre, and listen, he was like the Mahomes back then. Like he was like, there was no one better. I was trying to show because I was always in really competitive quarterback rooms in college. I was trying to show how hard I was working and just take the fastest 5-step drop or the fastest 7-step drop. And look how quick I am, coach. Brett was he'd get the ball and he literally wouldn't even drop back. He would just kind of jog back there, like run back there and stop. It was almost like the main thing is what you do on the throw, not like how fast your drop is. So like it's important to have like an explosive get away from the center drop. Like it's important, but the most important thing is making sure that the ball is halfway there before the receiver turns around, and making sure that the ball's on the front number, not the back number. Like that's the most important thing, and that your decision is the right decision. It wasn't like, oh yeah, you were the first one to 7.5 yards. Great job. But like the play hasn't even really happened yet,
Yeah, I also love
that way.
Yeah, I love how you talked about how like in a competitive setting it just clicked for you, because we tell our guys all the time, and we'll be working through it, and we'll be talking about the fundamentals, the mechanics, and we'll be drilling it, and they'll be struggling through it a lot of the times. And then we'll go to a compete period where, like you said, everything's off, don't think, let's just react and play, and we'll film it. And a lot of the time, same thing happens. Like, look, you're doing it right here, and you're not even thinking about it. So that's great to hear from you. So on the other side of the film, can you give us any little nuggets or anything, like how you watch film or how you were taught to watch film? Because I think a lot of high school kids, they just turn on the film and they watch their highlights, or they're not schooled on the proper way to watch film.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, coaching high school football the last 4 years, it's not great film. Like it's hard to watch the film sometimes. Like in fairness, it's not great angles. Like some schools do a much better job than others. But one of the things that I used to do is I used to chart, and when I was in college, I don't think I ever really was tied into the front too much. Like it was just kind of like, I don't know. It's like, who cares if the guy's like 2 inches this on this side of the center, or he's 3 inches that side of the guard? Like who really cares? But then, the popular defense when I first got into the NFL was these like the Tony Dungy, Tampa 2, Monty Kiffin, Lovie Smith, Gus Bradley, like, all those Tampa 2 type guys. And what I learned was every time it was an under front, I knew what coverages they do not play. And so it says, I don't know what coverage you do play, with the under front, but I know what coverages you never play. So if it's an under front, you're going to bring the Sam and the Mike and play 3-fire zone if the strong safety's down. But if the free safety's down, you're in an under front, you're going to play a form of 3 weak. And like you could potentially play man with like a robber, but your corners are going to give that away. It was like, and if it was an over front, you're going to bring the weak side linebacker and the Mike, who's now weak side, only if the free safety's down. And if the strong safety's down, you're only going to play cover 3. And if it's an over front and all 3 linebackers are stacked, you're going to play Tampa 2 and nothing else. Like that's all you do. And so like, it just, I don't know. As a quarterback, you like walk to the line and you're trying to, I don't think of it as like, I'm trying to figure it all out. I'm just trying to delete what it's not, and then I ask one question. In film room, or if I'm walking into the huddle, breaking the huddle or walking the line of scrimmage, but in film, always, what would be my problem? So like if we're in a formation, we have this formation, I'm watching the opponent on film. Here's the play in my head, 4 verticals, what would be my problem? He's like, well, okay, well, what would be my problem? Well, if those 2 guys came, that would be my problem, like next, what would be my problem? And just having that mindset, well, cover 2 would not be great. I better be real careful if they cloud that corner, and then you just go into that mindset. But yeah, so tying the fronts in, I think, is something that it's not that hard. Like, trust me, it's not that hard. It can be scary sometimes for people because you weren't taught maybe, but I think that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, you talked to like a lot about like developing and progressing, where a lot of these things are like second nature. And you obviously had a ton of success over your career. Do you think there was a big breakthrough moment or like a light bulb moment at some point early on in your career where you kind of feel like you figured it all out?
I think my second year in the NFL, I had no choice. It was so competitive. We had a new head coach. Ray Rhodes came in. We had a brand new head coach. We had a new offensive coordinator. Brett Favre was the starter. He's not going anywhere. Rick Meyer was the backup, or me. Rick was, the number 2 pick in the draft. It was him or Drew Bledsoe coming out. Rick was at Notre Dame. I had posters of him in my room when I was a kid. He's like a great athlete. Like he had no flaw. And then the Packers drafted a 4th round pick quarterback out of Virginia in Aaron Brooks, and he was going to make the team. So it was like, dude, you better be all the way in. Like you better You better know the O-line calls better than the O-lineman. You better know it all. Like you got to be all the way in. Failure is not an option. And, and that I kind of like, that's when it clicked. And now what also happened at the same time was like Mike McCarthy, the Packers guy, helped me with the footwork, and it all just clicked. And quite honestly, I can't take credit for all of it. I led the NFL in passing that preseason, and it was like obnoxious, but it was crazy. Like I'd throw an in route, guy'd catch it, everybody falls down and slips, and he goes for a touchdown. It was the weirdest thing. It was like 7 or 8 touchdowns in like a quarter in every preseason game. It was nuts. I can't even describe it. I don't think I can take credit for it. It just was like the ball bounced my way a little bit, like grace of God, like things just went that way. But I worked my tail off for the opportunity, and had it not gone my way, it would just didn't. Hey, whatever. But I did my part, and I was ready to roll.
Worked your tail off is perfect, actually. I was going to hit on this next. Henry really sticks out with like his toughness, his work ethic, just overall. Is there anything that you kind of instilled in your children early on from your playing days that you kind of think set them up for success?
I don't think I really tried to do that for them. I think with Henry, with all my kids, well, first of all, I think Henry's got a big sister that is like kind of a bully. His middle sister, Mallory, for everyone who knows Mallory, like she's a tough cookie, man. Like she was the punt, pass, and kick champion when I was playing for the Colts. Like she's a beast in every sport. And she was tough on him. Um, I think like in terms of my kids, they all were very successful in their athletic endeavors. Our only family rule was that you can't specialize. You got to play every sport that's available to you all the time. That was really our only rule. But I would think that they saw how hard my teammates and I worked. Like when we were off, we were never off. Like we were always running, throwing, lifting, trying new stuff, like lifting heavy, like power cleaning, deadlifting, like just, it was important, and we were all doing it. Running conditioning tests, like running them as a family sometimes, but like that was just going to be an important part of like what I had to do for my job. So I think, maybe in a way, like he just thought that's just what needs to be done. I also give a lot of credit to Zavarian and just like the culture that's there. Like it's the cool thing at that school is to be your best and to try your best. I don't think that's the case everywhere. Like I know, like for me, when I was in junior high, it was like almost cool to not care a little bit, or not cool to be all the way in, so that if you didn't succeed, you kind of had a built-in excuse like, oh, whatever, and like my experience at Zavarian was like, a lot of the people that I grew up with and I was really tight with, they were getting into like drinking and drugs and smoking and all this other stuff. And I found a group of guys that even in other sports, they were just like, we're not about that. Like I am maniacally obsessed with making it to the next level in college for my sport. And like we competed with each other over that, and we cared a lot about that. So, I don't know. I think finding strength and community, and that's another thing that I love what you guys have done with the quarterbacks in this area that have just like, yeah, you're competing with each other in a sense, but you're really not. It's a camaraderie with each other so that you're trying to be the best that you can be. But it's just infectious and contagious when you have other people who are like getting after it in the same way. And I just think it's a powerful thing when you can have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think such a cool thing too is your return to Zavarian, right? Henry makes the decision to ultimately end up going to Zavarian after being at Belmont Hill, and you ended up jumping on the coaching staff. I believe your dad helped out as well. Can you just talk about like how rewarding, and just that obviously was a magical year for you guys, the year you ended up winning the state championship. Can you just give us a little insight on how that was for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was a gift from God, honestly. I had gotten laid off my job had kind of changed. I was working Saturday, Sunday in New York. And so like with the ISL schedule, like I was never going to be able to ever see him play ever. And it just wasn't an option for me. So I just needed a Friday night situation. Nothing was guaranteed or promised at Zavarian. I didn't know what their situation was. They weren't really a place that threw the ball very much. It was like, didn't know, I didn't know what it'd be like for Henry going back to that school where I played and all my brothers played. I didn't know. Really didn't know. So go in there kind of blind, and Alfanaro's there, and he was there when I was there. And so he comes in, and they've got this like first little, like, I don't know what they call it. It's like a 3-day camp in the off season. He calls me and he's like, "Hey, do you know anybody that can coach O-line?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure I know somebody." And I call a bunch of people, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? No one can do it this time, but like, it's 3 days, right? I'll coach the O-line." And he was like, "Well, actually, like, our offensive coordinator, he's kind of more of an O-line guy, so he'll take the O-line, and can you take the quarterbacks?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I'm not really even sure, like, that 3 days just turned into like the year, and my dad was out there like working with tight ends that had never played football before that were wanted to come out for the team. And like, we just were around it. And we just never stopped. And it was just a gift. It was just so much fun being at my high school with people that used to be teachers, when I was at school there, guys that came before me, guys that came after me. It was just a really, really cool thing to be a part of. And I ended up getting laid off at ESPN, which was like the biggest blessing in the world, because I never would have quit my dream job, a job like that at ESPN, to spend more time with family. But the decision was kind of made for me. And so, that's kind of what happened. And it was awesome to get to spend that time with Henry. He was committed to play lacrosse at the time, really didn't, hadn't really played much football. So just the whole thing was just, really a gift.
Yeah, it was an amazing run, and like you said, just such a cool story. Ended up being Gatorade Player of the Year, getting a ton of offers, having a ton of success, and I'm just sure sharing that with your family and like going back to where you played, like it must have just been so cool for you.
Yeah, and the funny thing is too is like, Henry as a sophomore was like 5'9", 145. His a freshman, that was COVID year. He broke his arm and like was in a cast like this for like, I don't even know, like way too many months, like forever. Like couldn't even straighten his arm. And so like, he was the third string quarterback as a sophomore on a team that won one game, weighing 145 pounds. And so like, you just don't, like, that's kind of like another thing on like specialization. Like even now I coach in Nashville, these like so many parents are like, "Oh, my kid's got to go play baseball, or he's only going to be able to play this sport or that sport or this sport." Like, man, you don't know. Like, I thought I was going to be the catcher for the Boston Red Sox. And if not, I was going to be the next Larry Bird. Like, football really wasn't my top choice, but like football chose me, So like, I think that just, it's so dangerous to try to crystal ball it at such a young age. 'Cause like puberty happens for kids. My story is that story. I think that would be Henry's story as well. He matured a little bit later and, was healthier, so who knows?
I think that's so important for like parents and kids to hear, right? We talk about it all the time because kids get stressed out about recruiting and if things aren't going well for them, but everyone has a different timeline. And we talk about it all the time, like run your own race. And it's hard for kids, but I think it's important in that when they hear stories like that, I think it helps them a little bit.
Well, it's even harder now because of the transfer portal thing. And now the JUCO kids getting the extra years, and like really no one's recruiting high school kids and quarterbacks the way that they used to. So it's very unfair for the kids that are juniors, that are 26s and 27s and 28s. Like it's a whole different world for them. And that's why, your timeline, like your journey, it just might look different than you thought it was going to look. But again, that's why like you don't need to worry about the scoreboard. You don't need to worry about the pins, just do every play right and the score will take care of itself. I think that mindset's a better mindset.
I was just about to touch on that too, with like the piece of advice you would give a high school kid right now with everything that's going on. Not only that, and if you can branch out a little bit off of what you just said, but also for parents. Like I know the specialization thing is obviously an important thing, and kids should be kind of doing a little bit of everything to see when it eventually pops for them or what they enjoy the most. But in terms of their recruitment and development, you went through it with multiple children, and Henry most recently. Like what's a piece of advice you would give for not only the kid but the parent?
Well, I mean, it really depends. I would just on the specialization thing real quick. Like when Tom Coughlin recruited me to BC, he never came to a football game, never once, but he came to a ton of my basketball games. He wanted to see how I was on that team where I wasn't the star player. He wanted to see how I was with referees and officials. He wanted to see like my energy on defense, on rebounding, my grit. He wanted to see how I was on the bench when I wasn't in. He wanted to see during timeouts, was I getting water for my teammates or was I expecting somebody else to do it? He was looking at all this other stuff, very similar to what Andy Reid eventually told me. And so like I just sometimes it's not about the sport. It's not about how good you are in the sport. Like my daughter Mallory, she was captain at BC when she wasn't even a starter. She just, she transferred to Stanford and, she's there like 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever. Like she's captain there. And like, I don't think it's by accident that she has 13 varsity letters in high school in sports that she was like literally the worst person on the bench, on some of the teams, like hockey or some like field hockey, didn't know how to play at tryouts. Like, I don't think it's bad to be not Steph Curry on the Golden State Warriors, to be like that last person on the bench. It's because in some other sport, you are going to be Steph Curry and like you are going to be a better leader and teammate and quarterback because you know what it's like to be that guy, or that girl. So like, that's part of the specialization. That's why I'm passionate about that part of it. But, there's a lot, and every situation is a little bit different, but, all I can tell you is that my path, and I think most of the paths of the people that I know, it's not how I would have drawn it up or how I thought it would go. And that's okay. I think that's the one thing that is clear through stories like mine.
I think that's super cool too, because then you get to experience, you're walking in other people's shoes for a little bit, like when you are the guy, being able to, now I'm going to treat that guy with a certain level of respect because I know what he's going through, I know what he's dealing with, and you've seen it firsthand now. And becoming that type of leader, what is it that quarterbacks can do to establish like a certain culture within a team, or maybe what you did? I heard you talk about it recently. I think it was about Darnold and the Seahawks middle linebacker, and then the relationship that you had with Lofa Tatupu, right? And like how you guys are iron sharpens iron, kind of button heads, but then, when you guys are playing together on the same team, like it's a whole different animal. Like what goes into kind of setting the tone there with that type of culture?
Competing all the time, just competing with your teammates. Like I'm competing with you at practice, but not in a way like I'm rooting against you. I'm really just trying to be the best version of me that I can be. Like I remember even early on in my career in Green Bay, like Mike Holmgren said it. He was like, right off the bat, I don't care where you were drafted or how much money you make or what you've done in the past, the best players will play. And then he said, well, granted, I think Brett Favre is going to be our starting quarterback and Reggie White's going to be our starting defensive end. But that was the culture and the mindset. And like, I think even for Brett, compete with me in everything that we do, in everything. In the weight room, compete with me, and nutrition, compete with me, and quarterback play, like on the field, compete with me. If we do drills, compete with me. And like, in an unselfish way. And that's the hard thing about quarterback, because one guy plays. It's not like these other positions, like being the goalie. It's tough, especially tough when you're not the guy. So how are you a good teammate, and how do you lead on a team when you're not getting the reps and you're not getting the opportunities? That's hard, man, because the clock's ticking and like, oh shoot, if I don't start this year, when am I going to start? And like all that kind of stuff. Like I get it. It's hard. But your teammates are seeing how you are handling that adversity that you're going through. Like, what are you doing? Are you going through the script afterwards? Are you back there just watching practice, talking to your buddy? Or are you literally like practicing the footwork, going through the read like you were getting the rep? Are you the 12th guy in the huddle, like listening? How's the starter do it? Are you making sure your cadence is exactly like his cadence so that when you come in, nobody jumps off sides? Like all those things. And then, yeah, you will relate to all your teammates for the rest of your football career better, because they are in a situation at some point where they're competing and they saw how you handled it and all of it, like I just think that all of it matters. Stuff that people don't think matters. It absolutely matters.
One of the biggest things to hammer home too, I think for us, is like there are no small details in any part of the position. So I'm glad that you hit on that. And I think it ties right in with that specialization piece. Like you're learning the roles, like you're understanding like all these different things you can do to help your team be successful. So I think that's awesome for the kids.
And it's hard. Like, the work that you guys do, as an example, like if you're doing something else it's going to be really hard to get it all done. And it's probably going to be hardest on your parents who are driving you, or if you're old enough to drive, like it's going to be hard to get it all done. Homework, your sport, quarterback training, lifting, like it's not easy. And then once you get into the recruiting time, that's half the battle. Like getting off the phone with coaches too at times. That's a drag. Like knowing when to say no, like, hey coach, I appreciate it, but I got a big test today. Do you mind if we talk some other time? Like that coach is going to respect it. He's going to be like, all right, I like this kid. I need to get off the phone too. I've been recruiting all day, but that I'm going to remember that kid. Like you could do it. Like you got to put boundaries and say no to get it all done. And so like, I don't know. I think that there's something through the adversity and the grit of fighting through, time management and all the stuff that like when you get to college, it's going to be, I don't want to say easier, but in some ways easier because you're going to be playing one sport. It's all going to be scheduled out. You're not doubling up. You're not taking phone calls from coaches all around the country. It's going to be like a little bit more simple.
It's a good point. I like it.
I know. I didn't even think about it like that, but that it is. And then you couple visits, right? And having to make a decision on a school, like there's a lot that goes into it. And like you said, a lot of time for the parents. I always we stress that to our kids is like, make sure you thank who got you here, right? Make sure you thank who's making that sacrifice, because I think for some kids it gets lost sometimes. And it is, like you mentioned, such a big sacrifice for parents. And it is hard to balance. Like we have kids going to basketball practice and then coming right after, we have kids doing sports during the weekends, and then they come over to a train. Like it's a lot. But we're lucky we got a really dedicated bunch.
It is a lot, but yeah, it's also a lot at the next level. Like it's every bit of what, like you'll see. I mean, they'll see. It's a grind.
Yeah, we just had a college coach on the other night, and he was kind of mapping out like the day-to-day schedule. And I think for some kids, like to hear that is overwhelming. And I don't think you really realize it until you're in it. Like I mentioned, I remember like my first week of preseason in college, and it was 6:30 to 9:30 at night every day, and like every minute was accounted for. And that was, for me starting out as a freshman in college, it was overwhelming. It was a lot. But I think you make a really good point. If you're really good with your time management and you're doing a lot in high school, it prepares you for that next level. Shifting gears a little bit, I think you have such a unique and incredible story of like your dad played in the NFL for a long time, had a ton of success, won a Super Bowl. Obviously, you had a really long tenured career, a ton of success in the NFL, and then your brother was playing in the NFL with you at the same time. Just what did you learn from your dad that you applied in the NFL? What did you learn from your brother? Did you guys bounce things off each other while you were in the league? Like, just give us a little insight on that.
I think the non-negotiables from my dad, like he would just tell me little things like, never walk on the football field. Like never. You can have the slowest jog in the world, doesn't matter, but like you can never walk. So like you'll never find me walking. My favorite line is, if you're walking, you're wrong. That's just something that's just like, it was always a thing. And it kind of falls into the line of like, care about what coaches care about. Never sit on your helmet, never sit. Like, just like, we're not sitting. You can take a knee or stand. But we're not, like there's just like certain things, like when the play's going on, we're looking forward. Another thing, just like if coaches are yelling at you, like that's okay. It means they probably know your name and care about you. They're investing in you. If they're not talking to you, that's not okay. My dad's favorite coach that he ever had probably was Bill Parcells. And Bill Parcells was riding him all the time, verbally, when he was with the New York Giants, when Mark Bavaro was the backup. My dad was the backup to Mark Bavaro. He was like the old guy with the young guy. And he was always like old jokes or like, hey, Hasselbeck, you gonna let Bavaro do that? It was like that kind of stuff. And he would tell us like, that's a good thing. He'd be like, hey, Dad, why was Coach Parcells so mean to you today? Like, no, that's a good thing. And so like when I got to Zavarian and I'm getting coached hard, or I get to the BC and I'm getting coached hard, I get to the Packers and I'm getting ripped by Mike Holmgren, like I understood like, hey, this is not a bad thing. It's like, hey, what are they really trying to say behind the, raising of their voice? So I think that was really helpful for me with my dad. And in terms of my brother, it's just fun to talk quarterback stuff with people who can speak the language. It's just fun. You know, like I think you guys probably understand that better than anybody. But when somebody, you could just talk the language and you say like, oh, so what happened here? Well, da 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 da. Like, oh yeah, okay, oh yeah, that's, you know, like it's just nice. It's just like it's just a great brotherhood of I don't know, like people who get it, and I appreciate having those people in your life who can, you know, pull you through like the good and the bad.
Yeah, that's great. And this has been so good, and I think our kids are going to get so much out of this. Last one for me, we ask all our guests, just what is your why, whether it's with your family, your profession, you know, your faith, what is your why in life?
Yeah, my number one thing, there's a Bible verse, Colossians 3:23, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your heart as if you're doing it for the Lord and not for men. And so like if you have a coach you love or a coach you don't love or a boss you love or a boss you don't really respect or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like you're just trying to make the most with your God-given ability and do it to the best of your ability. And if you do that, like you're good. And I think like in terms of for me, I think that's probably my number one why, and everything flows from that. You know, being a good husband, being a good father, being a good coach, being, you know, all those types of things, they come from that. And then the rest of it is just fun. You know, like you mentioned earlier, like, you know, even talking to my brother, I remember when I went to the Tennessee Titans, we got the New York Giants offensive coordinator who had been my brother's offensive coordinator. And I'm complaining to him about this one play. I'm like, oh man, I hate this play. I'm going to see if we can get it thrown out. And he's like, no, not that play. That's Eli's favorite play. Trust me, stick with it, man. Like stick with that play. That play is going to become your favorite play. Sure enough. It was like this run and shoot play became my favorite play. It was an unstoppable play. But like just having people in your life that kind of do it to the best of their abilities also, and they're just like not holding back. They're unselfish and free, and just like, you know, they want you to succeed and you want them to succeed, whether you're competing or not, or it's a brother or a friend. I just think that like you can just like let go, and that's really helped me a lot.
Perfect. That's such a great. I mean, we could sit here, like you said, and talk ball all day. I know when I get a phone call, even from my old high school coach, my wife's like, "All right, I'll see you in a couple hours." But I think that's just that's.
Can I give you some quick marriage advice on that?
I'm here all day.
So this is something that like my wife and I had to struggle with a little bit. Okay, so early in my career, I would only talk football to my dad and my brother, or like teammates, and my wife would say, "Hey, how was work? How was practice today?" And I'd just be like, "Oh, it was good. It was fine." And then I'd get on the phone with my dad or my brother and I'd be like, oh yeah, so then, you know, he sprains his ankle and then he comes down and then we had a down block that didn't happen. And then this dude like cheap shots him. Like I would include your wives in this. They know a lot of football and you'd be surprised, and you can even teach them or just put it on speaker and let them listen. And like my wife, she's a big reason for me making the team my second year in the NFL, because she would take the playbook and she would quiz me like on formation. She'd be like, all right, because the coach back then, he would call the play, not the formation. I had to memorize it. So she'd be like, all right, we got 2 jet X stagger, white shell across, fake 40. I'd be like, oh, we got double right, zebra return. She'd be like, yep. All right, we got pass 64, U corner, halfback flat. I'd be like, Y motion to blue right, tight close. Like, nope, that's wrong. You know, like, and so if you can include them in it, it's great for your relationship, and you'd be surprised how much football they know. There's my advice.
Great
to
advice.
Kay's gonna know how to attach a coverage to a front by tomorrow morning. Then
I think she'll find it fascinating. They might even give you some ideas too. Well, what if you just got into a different front and did this corner blitz? Like, yes.
Boom. I love that. That's great. Jimmy, anything else?
No, I'm good. That was awesome, man. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, that, like Mike said, that's invaluable. Our kids are going to absolutely love it. But we appreciate your time. And if you ever want to come back on, the invite will be open.
All right. Well, I'd like to hear from you guys some more if I come back on. But I appreciate you guys having me. And I meant what I said earlier. I think that you guys have done a great job in this area. There's so many great quarterbacks that are getting recruited from big time schools around the country. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's the work that you guys are putting in here with kids and the camaraderie, and it's just been a really cool thing to watch. There was a time it was really hard to get recruited out of the state, in this region. And I just think it's just so different now. It's absolutely so different. And I talk to guys, that I know that are coaching all over or general managing all over the country. And, they know the kids in this region by name. They know them by name. And it's like a one-stop shop if they want to find out where they are, because we know where they are. They're with you guys.
It's a testament to their hard work. Like I said before, such a dedicated bunch, and they've set the standard of year-round commitment, to training, regardless of the sport that they're in or the other, things that they have going on in their life. And it's been special to see. And a rising tide, raises all ships. So they start to see some of these kids have that success and know that it can be done out of this area. And it's just been a domino effect. And we're happy to play a small role in it, but it's all about the kids. They're doing phenomenal.